Yes, everybody. Russ and the West Ham Network. Hope you are all safe and well, my friends. Happy Friday. This morning, Anton did a piece about the Kudus saga, which we're going to have all summer, possibly across two transfer windows, as we sort of mentioned. The Premier League have signed off on that, with a gap in between for the Club World Cup. But today it is Hammers Headlines in association with the KUMB.com boys. Check them out. As always, for latest news reviews and opiniones over 25 years in the business. Now, I wanted to talk about a few things today. I want to talk about just putting some numbers together, really, for the summer transfer budget. We'll talk about Tim Steidten, and also I want to talk about England as well. So let's start with transfer news, so to speak. And obviously, Anton mentioned about the Al Nassr stuff. You know, whether it's true or not, there's gonna be not a fire sale, I'd say, as such, but I think we're going to see a few players moved on. The likes of Kudus potentially, Luis Guilherme, and also possibly Paqueta. We are still in the midst of week 2 of the trial, so we don't really know the outcome of that. But if you start putting those numbers on the back of a fag packet and say, obviously, Kudus's minimum release clause is £85 million. We don't know when that comes into effect, and I think I've got a feeling it might be the end of June that comes to effect. Might not be, but I don't know why. I just see that in my head. But obviously, with the whole thing with the new transfer window starting on the 1st of June, it does make things a little bit more awkward potentially around that. But you're thinking if he goes 85 million quid, I know it's quite simplistic, but we're led to believe Luis Guilherme is looking about 20 million, 25 million on that sort of return on what they spent on him. Fine order looking like a likely destination for him. So that's just over 100 million. And obviously Lucas Paqueta, I mean, he could follow Kudus out the door potentially. Not for the money that I think Man City were going to get from 18 months ago, but so you're looking at a collective budget, maybe about 150 million pounds there itself, and it does look like that's the way we're going to be operating in the summer, and it's going to take a lot of clever management of those funds, I think, to plug gaps. And as I've mentioned before, I think the academy is somewhere where we can help to fill in those gaps. We're going to talk about the academy in a bit, actually, because there was some interesting news released by the club around the academy and their involvement in England as well. One of the major, and obviously Luis Guilherme being one of the players we are looking to potentially move on in the summer. Tim Steidten. Tim has recently done an interview where he's been quite candid, really, about a number of things. Maybe trying to not necessarily set the record straight, but put his take on things. Firstly, there's a flat out denial about the alleged training club ban, Rush Green, which was imposed by David Moyes, basically saying it's wrong, it's not true. You can't come here. No one's told. I wasn't told that. I rather asked the question: what helps the club most? What if I now work with the coach who may not want to have this cooperation anymore, who perhaps wants to protect himself first and make decisions himself? That it doesn't need me. So no one could tell me except the owner, David Sullivan, that I wasn't allowed to come to training ground. When I arrived, Moyes was there, but the structure wasn't clear. The power relations, the competencies, you have a problem. Then the coach questions. The coach question was partly justified. Why should he let himself be criticised by me when ultimately the owner decides whether I stay or go? Shots fired from Tim Steidten. Then he was asked about transfers, and he said basically it takes 8 to 10 transfer windows to change a squad. 8 to 10 transfer windows. What is that? That's a 4 to 5 year plan. I told the owner that very clearly. This has to be a long-term project. At least that was what I gave to the club. My task was to build something in the long term, which also needs younger players. I have a lot of weaknesses, and I think that I made a lot of mistakes during that time, but I would have chosen the same players over and over again. Speaking particularly about Luis Guilherme, and also talking about Nicholas Fulkrug, which we'll talk about in a minute. He was asked about Graham Potter, as he was pictured holding talks with Potter before his appointment in January, and he revealed that the former head coach, Chelsea head coach, was initially on West Ham's shortlist before Lopetegui's arrival last May. And he said, he was on the list that was provided to the club, and decision was made not to make Potter the head coach at that time. He also apparently rejected offers from teams in Saudi Pro League since leaving West Ham. And as I said, in terms of the transfers, he said, I'm firmly convinced that Luis Guilherme will be an incredibly great player. Bringing a young player was perhaps that type of young player was perhaps the wrong time in retrospect, but not the wrong player, just the wrong time. Nicholas Fulkrug, he knew Nicholas would fit into the league and into West Ham. As they were looking for someone who could also lead the dressing room. He's known him since he was at Werder Bremen. He would do this transfer again because I'm simply convinced of his quality. I've learned never to regret a transfer due to an injury because you just can't influence that and you can't predict that. And indeed, for me, there was a sliding doors moment, I think, with someone like Guilherme, if not Guilherme, someone like Fulkrug, for example. If he hadn't got in, we spoke about myself and Martin yesterday, and we had our Luke McCloskey appreciation night. It descended into talking about Fulkrug and people like that, as it always does with me and Martin. And there was a sliding doors moment. If he hadn't overstretched to get that ball for Villa, he may well have not got injured, and you would have seen a different Nicholas Fulkrug. And actually, one of the interview we had the other day with one of the ex-players, we'll talk about that in a minute. He said about sliding doors moments, and there was a time when a new manager, a new head coach came in, and he got injured. And by getting injured, he was then down the pecking order, way up, and actually was sent out on loan by that head coach. So it's interesting to see the comments of Tim, which have been reported in the Athletic. The full interview has been reported in the Athletic with Shane Thomas. And lastly, I want to talk about the academy. You know me, I'm loving the academy. Now, according to a table released by the club, out of all the 38 teams with players representing England's youth sides from 17s to 21s, West Ham's academy ranked third in terms of players selected with 10 overall if you include the full team squad with Jarrod Bowen, trailing over Man City at 15 and Chelsea with 10. We had Caelan Casey, George Earthy, technically on loan at Bristol City, and he pulled out, so he didn't really play. But anyway, Ollie Scars, Lewis Orford, Finn Herrick, Amike Adiele, Edris Golombekis, and then the first year scholars, Lomre Awusu and Chinzane Nwusu. So both featured for the under 17. So and as well as that, Callum Marshall for Northern Ireland first team, Christian Heggie was selected for the Hungarian full national side. Josh Landers played for the under 19s in Scotland and scored in his debut. Josh Briggs and Patrick Kelly, Northern Ireland under 20s, part of a very sizable group of young hammers representing West Ham on the international stage. So it sort of gives you a moment to reflect, actually. There's a lot of good, and you can see people ask why I'm so confident and so happy about West Ham, because things like this. This is the future. This is our future. And it's great to see, the academy is well placed, third on after, Chelsea and Man City. And Man City have a juggernaut of an academy. We're two better than Spurs, and then there's a whole bunch on 6 and 5. But that Man United, for example, only 5 players. Kenny Brown was quoted as saying it's a brilliant achievement for the players. A huge amount of work that goes on behind the scenes. From the moment the boys scouted to being with us and representing their country, I know everyone who's played a part along the way will feel immense pride. It's great for the families as well. The parents of the journeys they're on, taking them to training 3 or 4 times a week and travelling all over the country from a young age. For them to see their son walk out to a national theme playing is huge, and seeing them so well represented is a brilliant accolade for everyone. There we go. And he was surprised that we were third. He said he knew about we'd be quite high, but that number surprised me. A great achievement for the players, but you shouldn't gauge yourself solely on whether you're in the national setup or not. And indeed, the ones who weren't were then included in Graham Potter's behind closed doors friendly earlier this week. The likes of Junior Robinson, the likes of Preston Fearon, they were included in the squads against Brentford, where we lost 1-0. So, yes, exciting times ahead and exciting times for the West Ham network. So, tomorrow we will be releasing our latest My Hammers 11 interview, and it's a very special one. He's an academy graduate. He represented Great Britain in the Olympics, and has just announced his retirement from professional football. We've got this guy coming on.
Potter's come in, and I feel like the pedigree's good. I know he come off the back of the Chelsea, but I don't feel you can kind of judge him off the back of that. What he done at Brighton was obviously massively impressive, and I think him and West Ham are a great fit together. Yeah, 7-8 years old. Yeah, long time. Yeah, I was there 19 years at West Ham.
Mental, innit? You get less for murder.
And his way of doing it, Alan Kovacic, was you turn up at the stadium, he'll come to the back of the bus, and then he would announce the team there and then. So he'd obviously called out the team, and he's mentioned my name, and I felt like I was floating at the time. I didn't really understand what I was doing. So much so that I forgot to even put tickets out for my family to watch me at the time. And then I get a phone call from Zola one evening, obviously saying, you're going to go on loan to Derby, and it was going to be a bit of a shock for me, which I just remember it being like one of the saddest days in my career, to be honest, because I didn't want to ever be associated with a relegation. And that final was, was one of the best days of my life. But I remember how nerve-wracking it was, and I've looked back at the game. They show it quite a bit now. The day itself, I just remember the atmosphere, and I've got visions on my head now of like pints getting thrown around as we're going on the coach on the way into the stadium near the Bobby Moore statue and everything, near the bowling, and just speech balls. You can imagine everything's flying up in the air, and I kind of got to Slough when there was a point where I knew I wasn't going to be playing as much, and kind of asked the question, am I going to be playing this year? Like, what you sit down with managers at times, and if you feel like you don't know whether you're going to be playing, then you kind of need to know at the start of the season, because you don't want to fall into the season and you sat on the bench every week. And I was a young lad, I needed to play games. Nobes was brilliant. Obviously the best servant of West Ham's had for God knows how long, right? And as a guy as well, for me growing up, looking up to him, and we had good times and bad times. Obviously I've had a few Barneys on the pitch together.
Yes, there we go. James Tompkins, over 200 appearances for the club. Hammer of the Year runner-up in 2012. Part of the last team to play at Upton Park, and obviously part of the promotion squad. Also part of the relegation squad, but part of the promotion squad under Big Sam. Great interviews, about an hour and a half, hour 20 long. We talk about everything. Talk about his plans as well for retirement. So make sure you check that out. That'll be out tomorrow. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that when it comes out. Also, there's a number in that video. There's a number of questions that have been submitted by our channel members. Thank you very, very much. We'll be doing that again on Mondays. We've got an interview on next Thursday night, I believe. So we'll be releasing who we're interviewing to our channel members and getting them an opportunity to ask questions to that particular Hammer. If you want to get involved, become a channel member, and you can you have that option available to you. But until next time, take care, everyone. Stay safe, stay warm, stay humble. Have a lovely weekend. James Tompkins interview tomorrow, and Mother's Day on Sunday. Much love. Bye bye.